Awesome. Well, like I said, I'm Carolyn Keller of Curio412. I'm going to go ahead and start to share my screen. And as we get started today, we had a number of different people register, but from the registrations, what Lauren and I noticed was that many of you are looking at a social media or communication strategy that maybe is very minimal or non-existent. So we're going to try and address some of your questions about social media strategies, communication strategies. And then of course, today's session is all about marketing for visibility. And so we did ask how visible we felt your organizations were. So a large percent of you said that you were visible locally and feel like you're very limited in your visibility and looking to grow in that. And so we hope today's session is going to bring you more information about how you can level up your institutions and your organizations in a way that gets you out in front of people. Lauren, I'm going to let you introduce yourself as part of the American Marketing Association while I pull up our slides here.
Sure. So it's a pleasure to meet everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Like Carolyn said, my name is Lauren Norris. I'm currently the immediate past president of the local chapter of the American Marketing Association here in Pittsburgh. I also serve on a national leadership committee where we serve the board members of our 75 chapters across the country and serve them in leadership marketing strategies for their chapters as well. So have gotten a little bit more involved on the national level. Professionally, I am on the technical sales team at Butler Technologies up here in Butler, Pennsylvania. And we're a contract manufacturer that serve the medical, industrial, print electronic industries. So I have a knowledge of both marketing and sales languages. So hopefully we'll be able to bridge a lot of those gaps for you guys today.
Thanks, Lauren.
Sure.
So first, as we get started, I just wanted to ask everyone, I know you're putting your information, introducing yourselves in the chat. Wanted to ask you to also put in the chat, what are some of your biggest barriers to standing out? Can be anything that you find is a challenge in your organization, your institution, challenges you have in getting the word out. Maybe it has to do internally with capacity. Maybe it's externally, the audiences that you're seeking. But just write in the chat what some of those barriers are for you and your organization. So yeah, resources, preconceived notions.
Lack of capacity.
Yep. Financial and people. I love that, Anna, targeting our audiences. Finding the right audience, yeah. Ooh, and just launching, yeah, that's a unique challenge in itself when you're first starting out. Awesome. Well, we'll hopefully address some of these barriers, if not all of them, throughout our session today as we move forward. I know we already introduced ourselves. I always do this. I get ahead of myself. I'm getting so excited about the people that we have, but this is just another overview. I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about us because we just introduced ourselves to you. And the first thing that we wanted to talk about was, what does visibility actually look like? And so when you think about your organization and you think about visibility, the way in which you know that your organization is visible is going to have a lot to do with how you measure what that visibility looks like. Is it, if you're talking about social media, is it likes or comments or other interactions? If it's email, do you show what that visibility looks like by the amount of response you get from that email, whether it's a targeted campaign for donations or it's a targeted campaign for a particular event you're running? So just wanted to focus everyone on thinking about, we're going to be focusing a lot on marketing and there's a lot of the tactical and strategical things you can do, but also keep in mind, you're going to need a way to know if those strategies and tactics are working. And so really think what that visibility looks like for your organization, as well as the particular campaigns that you're working with. one of the organizations that I follow that helps me center myself around what does some of those types of things look like. And I know Lauren will talk about this a little bit later as she gets into the more detail oriented aspects of marketing for visibility, is Impacts. And Impacts is a data-driven organization mostly for cultural institutions, and they focus on experience, mostly museums and other cultural organizations. And what they found over the past year, they've been putting out a ton of data on what's been going on during the pandemic. And what they found is that more people really are engaging online. They found that there was a 15% increase in people who visited an organization's website, that over 30% more people are following organizations on social media. And of those types of people that are following now, they're seeing more engagement where it's things like liking an organization's posts or commenting. And then this one was surprising to me. It just shows the power of email marketing, is there was a 58% increase in people opening an email from a cultural organization. So right now there are a ton of people who are engaging online, and we'll have all these slides available because I know we have a number of links that will share some of them in the chat, but we'll also have them available afterwards so you can explore further. So there's a link at the bottom here that takes you to the whole article that goes through these findings in a more detailed way. But as Lauren and I were putting this together, thinking about some of the needs and some of the trends that we're seeing, we know that online is a good way to get visibility, to grow visibility, and there's a number of different opportunities. And because of some of the things we're seeing, particularly in cultural organizations, wanted to focus on online engagement and your visibility. And so Lauren's going to talk a little bit as we go into strategy, but some of the things that you've already mentioned in talking about your challenges is when you create your strategy and the tactics that you're going to use for your marketing campaign, you want to understand a couple of things. First is going to be understanding your capacity. That's things like your budget. How many people do you have, whether they're volunteer or staff, and how much time can be allotted to doing social media, because that will really affect what tactics you decide to use, whether those tactics are a little bit more involved, or maybe you can streamline them in certain ways that will fit that time frame or fit the capacity of the staff who are there. Second thing to keep in mind when creating the strategy is knowing who you want to reach. That's something as you think about what does the visibility aspect of this really look like, you need to know visible to who. And Lauren's going to talk a little bit more in detail about that who, but your organization does a particular thing and it does it well, and you have a certain market that you want to reach, and you probably know who that person looks like or what that person looks like, but being very clear as to what that person's needs and desires and challenges are going to help you to create that strategy as well. And then lastly, and I know I started on this, but it's measuring what your success looks like. So on an online campaign, maybe it's measuring engagement. On an email campaign, maybe it's seeing registrations or seeing donations, depending on what that is. But understanding that knowing what success looks like in the real world makes it a lot easier to say, okay, here's how well we did. Let's try something a little bit different and see if it works. And then you can really measure which way you go and see the impact that your strategy is starting to have for the visibility of your organization. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lauren to talk a little bit more about the strategy and tactics you can use to really level up that visibility, especially in the digital space. So take it away, Lauren.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, if you can move to the next slide, that'd be great. So when thinking through really how to present these strategies and ways to improve your visibility, and as Caroline and I were pulling this all together, I kind of kept coming back to, we have the reasons why we post. We have to be on social media, right? Like, well, we know we have to be there, so we're there, but how do we make it work? And what is the strategy behind it? So I really thought today was going to be, whether you currently have a strategy or not, just really going over the basics of building out the foundation and looking at where you may have gaps and where you are already doing things really well, and then how you can move all of that forward. So the biggest thing that I think through before anything is, why am I doing this? What is the end result supposed to be? So, okay, we're posting on social media because we know we have to be there, but why are we doing it? Is it to be present? Is it to gain followers? Is it to generate more donations? Is it to increase our visibility? It's probably a mix of all of those, right? But why are we doing it? What do we want the outcome to be of these efforts and the time? And seeing that a lot of you have time, capacity, the people that are able to manage and execute that, that becomes even so much more important to think through the strategy behind it, the planning behind it, and where can you automate to be able to loosen up some of your time, knowing that it's running in the way that we need it to run. So that's kind of just a overview of where we're going to take our thinking today through this presentation. So if we want to move to the next slide, the biggest question that I would have is, who are we wanting the max visibility to be for? Do you know who you are looking to target? And who is your core person that you want to be engaging with your organization, to be on your committees, to be your volunteers, and to be involved in events, etc. So if you guys can put in the chat, whether it's yes or no, tell me who currently has a document with 3 to 5 of their core personas developed out currently. So if you have them, yes. If you don't have them, no. What is a core persona, etc. Okay, great. So the majority, no. Okay, great. So for those of you that have them, this will be a refresh, but for those of you that don't, I'm going to kind of take you through what core personas are, how to develop them, and how to utilize that in your strategy. And I think that that was really like, ground one for what that looks like, but we're going to talk a lot about core personas. But if you go to the next slide, again, thinking through that, do you know who your core personas are, and are you speaking to them versus at them? So we're going to talk through that. The other thing we're going to talk to is, what does your current social strategy and planning process look like? Because that can really address the time issues and the capacity issues. And then thirdly, what are the best practices for tracking your data? How are you reporting? And do you even report on the ROI of the social media efforts in a way to leadership and board of directors that says, we have done this on social media and we've actually generated some donations from those efforts, and we have an ROI on the investment of that time, maybe paid advertising, etc. And we can get into those details later. But these are the 3 things foundationally that I want us to keep thinking through as you move forward with your strategy. So if we go to the next slide, core persona, the basic definition, this is a fictional person that represents all of the characteristics of your audience. So when you think through, is it a corporate director that is your partnership for a sponsorship opportunity for an event? Is it a contributor, a volunteer, a donor that supports the organization in honor of, memory of, or survivor of the cause? Or is it people in the community that want to contribute to their museums or libraries and be a part of the expansion and growth or the thriving of that organization? And so thinking through what those people look like, you then can almost put a face to your target. Instead of thinking of a list of parameters, well, we know that we need to target to people in Pittsburgh that live in this radius, and they already follow our page. We want to really expand on what that's going to look like. And this is kind of ground zero of developing what your content's going to look like, and who you want to be speaking to in that regard. So if we go to the next slide, Here's an example, and throughout this presentation, I know Carolyn shares the slides. I've put a ton of resource links. So if you want to open any of those, and we can kind of, do some interactives throughout it, some really great articles. Thank you. And you're going to be able to really build a library of bookmarks through this planning process. Again, so I know some of you have done this, some of you have not. Social media is a constant ongoing learning process, even for myself. Things update all the time. So just being up to date on the most current best practices is what I would also recommend. As you'll see here in the core persona example, I recommend getting some stock photos of just people that look like people that are your supporters or who you work with. That's always great to have that in this document. And come up with the examples. Again, they're fictitious, but you have millennials with their ages, the education level. Are they single? Are they married? Where are they typically hanging out on social media? Where are they on a laptop, or are they typically on their phone? What type of money do they make, right? So the messaging may differ based on attracting a millennial for a work campaign versus, an older demographic that may want to volunteer and what that could look like. So reviewing what their behaviors are, what their frustrations may be, what their motivations are to potentially be engaged with your organization are all really important to think through. So I know I'm going to be giving you guys a lot of work. So don't be mad at me for that, but it's going to be that counterintuitive slow down to speed up mentality in what you can do to really enhance what this looks like. So as we're going through, again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat as we go through, and we will get through them throughout the presentation. But I can't stress enough the need for a core persona document that lives within your marketing strategy to really be able to pull from. And then, excuse me, with this, when we get to the resources for planning, you'll be able to see how you can create that editorial content based on who you want to target it to, and having that mix throughout any given month on your channels. So parlaying from that, now we have our core personas, and now we need to take this to our editorial calendars. The biggest thing that I can say, and again, yes, no, in the chat, if you have an editorial calendar that you keep up to date, if you don't have one that you're working with, but with the editorial calendar, I always recommend planning a quarter ahead. So in we'll say mid-May is when you would want to start planning your editorial calendar for July, August, September. So this gives you 6 weeks of that Q2 to plan out your July, August, September messaging. And when you look ahead that far, you're going to see, what events do we have coming up? What campaigns do we have coming up? What are the initiatives? And now you can plug in content for those specific things. Are we promoting an event? Are we doing a relaunch? What does that look like? Then we can also go in and say, okay, we want to make sure that we promote this aspect of our organization and do an educational areas around this. And here are pieces that we can take. A lot of times you can go to your website and look at all the different areas of your website and break those out into so many different pieces of content that become educational. Did you know? Here's how we're helping with this. Have you been involved with that? And formulate a lot of that content in that way. So again, if quarterly planning hasn't been something that you've looked to, I really highly suggest that. Again, if you have a small team, the time is limited, the capacity, you could take essentially a day or less, 8 hours or less, to look at that, plan it out, create content, do some quick graphics, have them in a spreadsheet, and then start, scheduling and planning what that looks like. So I think that that would be very helpful as you get through your planning. If we go to the next slide, here is an example of an editorial calendar. Again, there are so many ways that you can do this. So again, I didn't want to say just one or the other because some people prefer Excel, some people have them in online, some people use Trello. So there's a lot of different tools out there. And that article, social media posting and scheduling tools, has a lot of great areas that you can look at and test and see which ones may make sense. Now that a lot of people are remote, there's a lot of great sharing tools online that you can be connected all together remotely. But it really is helpful to really, again, have that as a living document laid out. You know what's coming down the pipe. The other thing, the posting and scheduling tools, we personally use Hootsuite with the AMA for our communications. A lot of people that have, I know HubSpot, if you have their marketing, they have their own posting, which I think is a plugin through Hootsuite, but some of your CRM platforms may also have those. So if you already have a nonprofit CRM or marketing management platform, make sure you're using all the tools available, and that may be one of them. So it may be costs that you don't have to incur. Hootsuite is pretty low cost to have a pro version. So those would be other things I would definitely look at as well.
I'm going to put in the chat too. I recently learned of a website called AppSumo, and it's a website that essentially gets deals on different types of tech and software. And sometimes they'll have lifetime subscriptions. So I actually have my social media planner through a lifetime subscription. I think it ended up being something like $50 when it was $50 a month had I bought it through their own website. So
oh, that's great.
It's kind of crazy with the kind of deals they can come up with, but I'll throw that in the chat
for sure. Yeah, and there's a lot of nonprofit pricing that these platforms offer as well. Just knowing that it's not at the scale of their corporate clientele, so it's always worth the ask to do that as well. So again, planning and strategy are really important. The one thing, as we are thinking through, you can go to the hashtag slide from, so when thinking through all of the opportunities of generating interest outside of your current network, how do we get new followers? How do we, attract new people that, don't know us, or they don't follow us yet, or we don't have this huge following? Hashtags are wildly important and are great for opportunity to get you outside of that people that already know you bubble. So it really, again, allows you to have the exposure in your feeds and generate those new followers. Creating unique hashtags for your events is a really great way to have people that attend the events use that hashtag. It allows them to feel as they're a part of that event, and they're taking photos, and you're utilizing their networks and influence for the same, to promote. And I always, recommend using your local city, Pittsburgh, Erie, wherever you are. That also, so many people follow their local town's feed for things going on. And I find a ton of stuff in the Pittsburgh feed when I'm looking for different events, things to do, companies I may not be aware of. I've found through hashtag feeds. So Hashtagify and Hashtag Generator are two great websites where if you typed in museum, it would give you a list of hashtags that you could build out for any given post. And then Hootsuite has a great article on what your hashtag strategy should look like, best practices, and how to do that, etc. So I thought that would be really helpful for you as well. And a lot of people also will have a ongoing hashtag specific to their organization, and then create the events for the hashtags. That's totally up to you. But if you create a branded hashtag for your organization, And then, that's the feed. You can keep a lot of your content through there, and donor content or influencer content would live there as well. So now we have who we need to target. We've created the content to target those correct people. We've come up with a hashtag strategy to attract people outside of our, current follow base. And now we're going to start all the fun stuff, and that is tracking and ROI. So there's a lot of different questions that I think are great to ask yourself once you start running strategies, right? Every 30 days, I would recommend tracking your data, looking at engagement, who has left comments on our post, who has shared. Are these people that are they donors? Are they in our database? Have they volunteered? Could they be volunteers? To me, these are your warm outreach list of leads that you could continuously be engaged. They commented through Facebook, message them through Messenger. Have they reshared something on LinkedIn? Right, like kind of meet them where they are in your process, and be engaged with them in those areas, and continuously make sure that those people are engaged and get them engaged in that way. I think a lot of people forget that all that interaction on your social media, those are, the equivalent of sales leads, right, to an organization. Those are people that are paying attention to what you're doing and have taken the time to react to what you're talking about. So that's always a great list to pull. Unfortunately, that's something that is manually done. But for most businesses, it's not a daunting task. It's a great task for an intern to kind of go through those and look at what that data looks like. But when we're tracking data, when you're planning something, always have the end goal in mind. Again, what is that end goal for the next 3 months of the campaign that we're going to run in terms of content and where we're looking to grow? So what does that success look like for you? Is it a 30% increase in followers across all platforms? Is it converting donations through social platform links that can be tracked back to that? So really identify what those end goals are and then start to, track that data throughout the campaign. How will we know? Again, those are the goals you want to have clearly defined before you launch everything, and then track that throughout. And then your quantitative and qualitative metrics are always great to look at based on trends and how those are going. 5 metrics that are going to be really important, if you go to the next slide, that can help you determine your success is going to be your engagement. How much engagement, lack thereof, shares, comments, retweets. What was the reach? So I think reach is going to tell you how many people saw your content, and maybe they saw it and ignored it. So what is that conversion of visibility to engagement? What traffic? Was there an increase, decrease, did it stay the same from your social post to your website? Were there any email newsletter signs up as conversion from those? And what was the hashtag engagement? Did people catch on to that? Were they posting and were they engaging with that and promoting that for you organically? So those are some things to really think through and look for when you are reviewing all the data at the end of your campaign. The biggest thing that I can also tell you when it comes to data is being data informed versus data driven. So we can read the data and have all of the numbers, but how are your constituents actually informing you through the data? And you can really tell how people want to be communicated with, the type of content that they're engaging with over the ones that they're not. And this is going to help you reformulate your content over time to really plug into and speak to what they're most reacting to. And that's phases of time. that are going to, you know, as you kind of relaunch or redevelop your campaigns, that you're going to see what those patterns look like. And it also can depend on the core personas as well. So that's going to be very helpful to keep in mind, is that you can only do so much with the numbers, but then you also need to compare that with how people are all actually engaging with you as well. So if you go to the next slide, when we revisit your social media marketing strategy at the end of every cycle, again, I recommend quarterly. Some people do monthly. Anything shorter than 30 days is too short of a time to gather data that tells a full picture. But that's why I think like the quarter is the best, really the best look at what that looks. But ask yourself these questions at the end of every strategy. You know, did we stay on budget? If we didn't, why didn't we? If, you know, did we follow the plan? If not, why didn't we? Was it time? Was it capacity? Was it just fell by the wayside? Do we not automate things? You know, how do we overcome some obstacles? What feedback are we getting from our core personas? This is something that I would, you know, pick and choose what you think is most applicable to what you're working on, and have a worksheet. So you have a benchmark and you're checking yourself against each time frame, how it went, where you need to improve, what's going well, and what to move forward with, what to leave behind, and what to rework. So that would be, you know, a big thing as well to consistently ask yourself. So in conclusion, if we go to the last slide, the biggest thing that I can recommend is just consistently educating yourself with any tools, certifications, especially if you're the person that is building the strategy, evaluating the data, presenting to your executive director, board of directors, and creating the content. That's a lot of work, right? So, but a lot of times, most small organizations, you are the person. So in your free time, if you have that, these are some great modules, trainings, everything that would keep you up to date on best practices. HubSpot Academy, you can sign up for free. They have free modules on anything social media, sales, marketing, etc. Same thing with Salesforce Trailhead. They each have their own for that. Social Media Examiner is a longtime social media blog that has great resources. Co-Schedule Headline Analyzer, that's one of my favorites. When you're writing blog articles, if that's part of your strategy, you can copy and paste your blog headline, and it tells you how well it will do within SEO, and how well it will do on the search engines, and what you need to maybe edit if it's not at an optimal score. So that's actually really helpful, even if you're doing press releases and things like that, because everything now lives in a blog format. That's super helpful. So again, I know that a lot of this can be very dense, and a lot to digest. I wanted to give you that, you know, post-event reading, and kind of just give you that roadmap of developing your core personas, working on your content, and then tracking and creating that ROI and what that could look like. So I will open this up for questions. And Carolyn, if you have anything else to add, and please connect with me on LinkedIn. I am always available and willing to answer any questions. If you have strategies, I am happy to review them. Like anything that you guys are looking for, I'm always available for giving of my time to the nonprofit community.
Awesome. Thank you, Lauren.
Sure.
Like I said, this slide deck will be available following. We'll send around some results, but I'm going to stop the recording now and just open it up to Q&A and conversation. If we have time, we might even break out into small groups too to discuss what's going on with our organizations. But I'm going to go ahead and stop that. And